Well, a few years ago, there was talk about in Franklin, Tennessee, that maybe they ought to remove the Confederate monument there on the Court Square in Franklin. Of course, over the past 3 decades or maybe longer in Memphis, there's always been talk about removing military monuments. This first time I ever heard talking about changing park names was the recent incident in Memphis, but this is something I've been looking at for several years and was going to do back a few years ago, and decided that the support wasn't there to do it. And Tennessee is not the first state to do this. If you can do some research, there are about 4 of the states that have similar type preservation laws on the books. So we're not the first state to do this. The conversation we had on the floor of the House is exactly why we need a law like this in place, because people are simply rewriting history when they start removing names and symbols of Tennessee's history. And this was more than just Tennessee history, this is national history. The American Civil War was a national event, and much of our military history in Tennessee deals with the war between the states, or the American Civil War. I think the farther away we get from any event, there's fewer people who remember it, and then they start changing the way they remember it, or changing the way the history is recorded. And so I think it's unfair to those who participated in those events to allow, on a whim, someone to rewrite the history of a person or an event. Well, I think it's important that all Tennesseans study and learn history. Much of the talk you hear are from people who have not studied their history, and so they haven't investigated both sides of the story, or the 4 sides of a story in some cases sometimes. And I think historians understand that we don't need to be changing the names of various memorials to people or events, and that they should be there for interpretation for generations to come.